Our next speaker today, before we take to the streets, dear Stephen Kenny, who spent 25 years as a barrister and solicitor, someone who knows his way around the law and knows a little bit about how powerful entities can abuse the law. He's chaired the South Australian Council for Civil Liberties. He also happened to be part of the legal counsel for one David Hicks. I don't know if folk here who've been around a little while might remember that case, how he was another Australian citizen who was abandoned by his government, and it took some striking symmetry actually, tireless efforts of his family, of advocates, to get him out of Guantanamo Bay. Stephen, please be welcome.
Thank you, Scott, and thank you everyone for coming, and Uncle Jimmy for welcoming us so beautifully down there with the smokers. Now, when I walked in here this morning, there's a little monument down the end that says, "For King and Country." Well, he's not really my king, and I don't actually acknowledge him, but I think that one day we need a monument for democracy and those who have defended it, and the first name on it should be Julian Assange. Because that's what this case is about. It's about your democracy and your freedom. You want a totalitarian state? Sure, go for it, but go somewhere else, because we don't want it here. Now look, I've said to the Australian government before, have a close look at this case. Get your own legal opinion, because I can tell you what mine is, and mine is that, like David Hicks, Julian Assange has not committed any crime at all. So why is he in jail? If he's in jail, why isn't the editor of the Washington Post, the New York Times, the Spiegel, the Guardian, why aren't they all in there? And if they lock them up, I'll say, well, maybe they are serious about something and some crime that I don't know anything about. But while they are free and Julian is in jail, this is a political matter and it requires a political solution. Now, some of you may think that British justice is just that, but I have an Irish heritage and I know a bit about history and British justice. And you can see it in Julian's case. I mean, just small things sometimes tell you what's going on, and one of those was during the original hearing, Julian wasn't allowed to sit with his lawyers. He was put in a cage at the back of the room, so he couldn't assist his lawyers. I mean, he's a smart man. He understands the law. He understands the facts and knows them better than what his lawyers do. And yet they were stopping him effectively communicating and aiding himself in that court case. And that was unnecessary. And that's a shame. But the other thing is, now Julian's finally being able to have a proper go at appealing the grounds that they lost on the first round some 2 years later. And those documents were lodged in November last year, and a judge has simply got to read them and do what we call an assessment on the papers, which means he's got to read them and go, oh yes, he's got something to argue about. It's not that it should win or anything, he's got to have an arguable case. It's a pretty low bar, and I reckon, despite the thousands of pages that his lawyers have lodged, I reckon I could do it in a couple of days, maybe a week if I was really slow. But these documents were lodged in November last year and nothing since. And you know that justice denied or delayed is justice denied. So I have no faith in them. Now I just should say something to the press that are here, which is great to see you, and the importance of this case worldwide. Now let's imagine if you're in the press and someone comes in like Chelsea Manning and gives you a bunch of documents that relate to the Uyghurs in China or someone in Russia or something, and you think we're pretty safe here in Australia. We don't have an extradition treaty with China, so we're okay. But think about it, if you publish it and then you go to Bali for your holidays, and when you get to Bali, you suddenly realise that actually China does have an extradition treaty with Bali and Indonesia. And good luck in running your extradition case in Indonesia to stop you going to China. So have a think about that, because that's the precedent that this sets. You had a pretty long run, so I'll cut it short, but I, of course, get asked about, is there a Hicks solution for this? So my answer to that is, why should there be? He has not committed any crime. Like David Hicks, he should not be forced to plead something. We need our Prime Minister to stand up and not just say enough is enough. We need him to say, we don't need your submarines, because I've spoken to the Australian people and they said it's a crock of you know what. But what we do want is we want Julian Assange home. And we want him home now. And if you're not going to bring him home, we're going to vote Green, we're going to vote Independent, we're going to vote in people who will bring him home. So let's bring Julian home now. Thank you.